Hey, what's up, everybody? Today we are talking about Luminar Neo, relatively new editing software from Luminar. We're going to answer two questions. One, is it a good enough software for newer photographers, those just learning editing? And number two is it sufficient for sports photography, especially low light, high ISO situation? Let's find out. All right, everybody, this is an image I shot a couple weeks ago at a nighttime football game. It was raining, pretty miserable night. ISO 16,000 on a Nikon Z9. Nikon Z9s have a high density sensor and they tend to get really grainy the higher up you go in your ISOs. In fact, really, I don't like to take it above 10,000 unless I absolutely have to. That night, unfortunately, I absolutely had to. So it is a little bit grainy. What we're going to determine today is, can Luminar do a good job of editing this photo, and can it deal with that grain? So let's find out. Now, Luminar contacted me several months ago, and they wanted me to review the software, offered it up for free, not an endorsed video. And I held out because I was waiting for what they call an extension, and they're called their Noiseless AI add-on to this software right here, and I wanted to see how it would perform with high ISO low light situation. So I held out. So now I'm doing them now. Let's work on this photo and see how it works out. So the first thing I do when I edit any sports photo is I zoom in to 100%. And why do I do that? It's because, and I do it on the face. And the reason I do that is because I want to see how sharp the image is, especially in the face. And this one, I tell you what, I have edited this photo before in other software packages, other denoise situations, and I know it's capable of being nice and sharp. So with that in mind, let's look at the face right here. You can see lots of grain throughout. There's no color noise, which is this kind of like purple, green splotches you see in images that have a lot of noise in it. I think Luminar has pulled all that out already. I didn't do anything to do it to actually make that happen. It did it already. However, it left in what's called a lot of luminance noise, which is all that graininess that you see in the image. All right, so that's our baseline. I know it's going to be sharp, assuming we can get this all cleaned up in this software. So backing out from there, first thing you want to do is you want to crop your photo. And with sports photography, I always crop for impact. So let's go over here to the right. You see these tools, edits, that kind of thing. What you're going to do is hit crop AI, comes up, and let's just, I'm going to do free at this time, and I want to bring it in from the right a little bit. You see this kind of blotch in the upper right-hand corner. That was a light in the background. It's kind of distracting in the image. We want to take out stuff that's distracting if at all possible. He's pretty well centered right now. You got the opposing player in there, which is good. You know, I might bring it in, touch from the top, but I think overall, crop-wise, pretty cut and dry and simple. And hit apply, and away we go. Now, below crop are these things under what's called favorites. One's called enhance and one's called sky. Now, with enhance, I'm not sure exactly what's going on in the background, but if you pull it up and you slide this to the right, it seems to pump up some clarity into the image, and you could check the results. If you click this little eyeball icon, you could turn it on and off to see what's going on. It kind of brought up some of the background, which I don't really want in this image. So I'm just going to turn that off. I don't want to use it. So let's just move on. There's also this sky function right here. That's if you want to swap skies. It'll actually give you some examples from other skies that you could swap in. This photo doesn't have any skies, so we're not even going to play with that. But I have tried it out. It does work pretty darn good, and it's pretty effective. So I'm pretty excited about that. Let's scroll down, and let's get to that Noiseless AI extension, which is why I held out to review this software. As you see there, advice: use high adjustment for this image. Okay, let's try it out and see what it does. I'm going to hit click high, and it's going to do its thing. And it now goes into this kind of like matrix thing as it's examining it and thinking about it and doing it. And I will tell you, with some photos, Luminar takes a while to go through this whole thing, a lot longer than some of the other denoising software that's out there on the market. Probably twice as long, I would say, as some of them. So my first criticism of the software is it takes a long time to do these noise reductions operations. If I have a lot of photos that it's going through, that might be a problem. You know, sometimes I have galleries of hundreds of photos, and if I'm waiting on every single one like this could be a problem.
A few moments later.
All right, it's done, and let me see how it did. We'll go back up to the face. So not bad. It cleaned up a lot of it, but I'm not gonna say it's not perfect. There's still some granulization. I think that's a word. There's still some luminosity issues going on here. Although it's maxed out on the Noiseless AI, it's still going on. So because it's already maxed out, I'm not going to touch this anymore. I'm just going to go into the develop module and see what else we can do. And I know there's another noise reduction section in develop down below, so maybe we'll play with it more there. All right, let's go down to the Essentials tab, and the first block there is called develop. Let's take it back out to fit the screen so I can see the whole thing. Exposure, contrast, highlight, shadows, that's pretty common in most software. Exposure-wise, it's not bad already. It's pretty close. I brought it up a quarter of a stop, not very much. Contrast, smart contrast, apparently that uses some sort of AI as far as the contrast is concerned. Just playing with this a little bit. I'll bring the highlights down a touch, just so they're not blown out. Shadows, I'm gonna leave shadows alone. I don't wanna bring them up because I like the background to be dark, and if I bring up shadows, it'll bring up the background. I don't want that. So I think we're done there. Black and whites, you can, again, we can tone down the whites a little bit. The blacks seem to be okay. I'm not gonna mess with them. Color is good. The white balance came out fine. I shot this auto white balance and did a very good job. That's my common go-to, and I just try to fix it in post if it's a little off, but this came out pretty darn good. Sharpness, again, bring it down to the face. It's pretty sharp. You might play with it a little bit. If you do that, mask it real high because you want to just do individual details. The problem with sharpening, and this is in any software, not just Luminar, the more you sharpen with an image that has got a lot of grain in it like this one is, it tends to enhance the grain, and we don't want that. So let's just keep that down to a bare minimum. I said there was more noise reduction in the software later down, and here it is right now. So all these grains, that's luminosity. So we can play with it a little bit to smooth those out. The problem is the more you do that, you start to lose details. There's also color reduction, but I don't see that as an issue. And the more you increase color, noise reduction, a lot of times you'll have colors that start to smear, and we don't necessarily want that. So I'm not going to go any farther than this. I think it would just end up damaging or ruining or making things worse as far as the image is concerned. So I think it's about as good as it's going to get as far as noise reduction. So let's just leave it like that. Now we get into the transform module. You know, a cool thing is they do this objects removal, remove power lines, remove dust spots. I don't have a dust spot issue with this camera, so I don't believe there are any dust spots. I haven't seen any. All those little white specks are rain. But I have seen it remove power lines, and it does just that. The software looks at the photo, identifies power lines, and removes it. It's pretty cool. Landscape, dehaze, golden hour, foliage enhancer. Well, there's no foliage, there's no golden hour, so we don't need that. But if we did have that, the foliage enhancer would brighten up the color, the greens. Golden hour would enhance, you know, that overall golden hour effect. Dehaze, I actually kind of like that a little bit. Even on sports photos, because I think it makes the colors pop a little bit more. So I'm not afraid to throw a little dehaze on an image. Now, going down the line, there's even more creative type things you could do and play with. This relight, where it'll actually do lighting in different areas of the image, assuming, you know, you've got a lot of space. This atmosphere AI, create fog and mist and haze, but not something we're going to do here. Sun rays, you can actually like put a sun in one corner and cause the rays to come in. Dramatic, you can play with that. Let's see what that does. Kind of gives it more like a cinematic effect. Not something I want, so we'll move along with that. Mood, you could do all sorts of different LUTs, and they are presets. LUT is essentially a preset. Toning, you could give it a matte finish, not something I want to do. Mystical, like does like this kind of glowing effect. That's something I'm really interested in. Film grain. I mean, you could play with so many different things in this software, and I think that's really the cool thing about the Luminar products is they give you all these other things you could play with to make it look cool. Going down, portrait bokeh. This is interesting because it'll actually make the backgrounds appear more out of focus, and it works pretty well. And it actually masks the person out. We don't have that issue here, so I'm not going to do it. Face AI, I already tried it. It doesn't like the face in this photo because it's blocked, but there's things you could do to make the face, alter the face a little bit, which is good for portraits. Same thing with skin and body. You can actually make somebody appear their shape differently and their abdomen look smaller or larger. Again, nothing I do in sports. I try to make it look more realistic to what the person really was. So overall, I mean, there's tons of tools built into this that you can play with. In fact, it has a whole section of presets, which I didn't touch on yet. If you look over here to the right, and they have all these sections of presets that you could potentially apply to the photo and play with it and make it look cool. So even if you're not totally into sports, you want to do other things like landscape or portraits, there's tons of presets built into it. And I got to hand it to Luminar for doing stuff like that and giving you illustrations as to what it potentially looked like or like that. So now that we've gone through it, isn't sufficient for newer photo editors, hobbyists, amateurs, people just learn to edit photos. And I would say yes, very much so. I mean, with the slider system, you can play with it. You can do a lot of really cool things with it. And the more you play with it, the more you learn how to do it. And the learning curve is relatively short on it compared to the big, thick book I had to learn Lightroom. So I can do all these things in Lightroom, but it took a lot of time and effort to learn all those things. And with Luminar Neo, you could do it pretty quickly and accurately, relatively easily. So newer editors, I think it's a good piece of software. As far as sports photography, low light, high ISO situation, yeah, it does a pretty darn good job. I really can't complain. Is there stuff out there that's a little bit better? Yeah, but for most people, what they're doing, taking pictures of their kids, the high school game, the soccer game, whatever like that, it's plenty good for that. It does a good job. So all in all, great software for the newer photo editors. If you're already an experienced photographer, you've been using Lightroom and Photoshop, maybe not so much, but for newer editors, good stuff.